Dear students, parents and policymakers, Namaskar. The world has got three international rankings, or rather the more popular rankings. One is the QS ranking, the other one is the Times Higher Education ranking, the third one is the Academic Ranking of World Universities, which is ARW. Now these international rankings often shape the aspirations of students and the policies of nations. But how credible are these rankings? Beneath their glossy presentation lies a complex web of biases, questionable metrics, and potential conflicts of interest. Let's find out, dive deeper into this entire thing. Why we've been looking at these international rankings? It is because students, parents, and even marketeers are using international rankings very extensively to decide or make their choices or even sell their courses. And not just that, now the government of India also has stepped into this game. The government of India is pushing institutions to participate in the international rankings so that India can have more universities which have excelled in the world. But this is all about participation. Remember this is all about participation. The status of Institute of Eminence, which is IOE status, which is given to very select few universities, public and private, has considered the QS rankings and the THE rankings before they selected these 5 institutions to be given the status of IOE, which gave them almost complete autonomy. There is a restriction in terms of hiring faculty from international universities, but the Indian universities can hire faculty from international universities or international faculty as long as the PhD that is done by the faculty is from an international university which is ranked as in the top 500 of QS, THE or ARW. The third thing that's happened now is even the graded autonomy that is given to Indian universities is based on not just NIRF or NAC, but even if you are in the top 500 of any of these global rankings, you do get graded autonomy. And in fact, you get a category 1 university if you are ranked in the top 500. And because of all these things, the Ministry of Education and the Government of India has been encouraging universities to participate more and more in these global rankings, especially QS. In fact, there was a meeting that was held on 24th of January 2022 with Vice Chancellors and Directors of top 100 institutions in the overall category of India Rankings 2021 to encourage them to participate in the QS ranking and to submit lists of academicians and employers for QS academician and employer survey. International rankings are not based on data the way NIRF is. NIRF, because it's a government-promoted ranking system, the Government of India can ask data from the universities and institutions and use that data to give a rank. In fact, they also have the power to demand data, and they also have access to multiple sets of data from AICT or any other Government of India or a Ministry of Education, through which they actually can collate and actually give a more authentic and objective data. But the international rankings depend largely on reputation or perception studies. And these perception studies are questionable many a times. Almost 50% of the weightage in a QS ranking is on reputation, which is called academic reputation, which is 30%, employer reputation, which is 15%, and the outcomes also of employment outcomes and all, which is 5%. Not just that, the rankings also depend a lot on the financial muscle of the university, because they almost give 20% of the scores to international faculty, international students, international research, and so on and so forth. And all these things are a question mark for Indian colleges and universities. The first thing that we were looking at is a research paper that was published by the University of California, Berkeley, by their Center for Studies in Higher Education. Now, what they did was they actually took one country, which is Russia, where 28 universities participated in the ranking. Now, in Russia, it is compulsory for universities by law to publicly report all large procurement contracts at the Russian portal of government procurements. So if you actually end up paying someone outside of Russia, you need to report that in the government procurement portal. Because there was access to such data, you can actually look at how universities that actually paid QS for consulting contracts and how they performed as compared to those universities which did not pay QS through consulting contracts. And let me explain to you how it all happened. So now carefully look at this data in front of you, the table that I'm showing you right now. This is essentially a comparison of those clients who paid QS for consulting contracts versus those clients who did not pay, those universities which are not clients of QS. Here you actually have 9 universities who are frequent clients of QS, and how the ranking changed as compared to about 19 universities who are not clients of QS, and how the ranking did not change much. Here, if you see, and that is, by the way, this is a comparison over 5 years, from 2016 to 2021. So you actually have a 5-year range so that you can actually judge the influence or impact of being a consulting client of QS. When you look at these 9 universities, the mean rank of these 9 universities was 609 in 2016. By the time you came down to 2021, the rank of 609 has come down to 418, which means it actually improved by 191 ranks. The clients, the 9 universities, the mean ranks fell down by 191. What was 609 has become 418. But when you're a non-client, the 582 you see has only come down to 508, which is about 74 ranks. The same group of 9 clients was corroborated with THE and other rankings also. When you look at THE, the same set of 9 clients, in the case of THE, there were only 8 clients for this one, 8 universities, and they were, by the way, not clients of THE because THE doesn't have this kind of a system. The 706 rank mean has become 858, which means while QS is saying that they improved the rank by about 191 positions at a mean level, level, in THE, which is the Times Higher Education ranking, they actually fell 152 ranks. Right? And that is an alarming number. By the way, THE is very, very secular in terms of its, the other universities also. Like if you look at the QS non-clients, and they took the same group into THE also, where it's become 17. There also they fell 102 ranks, right? So very clearly what you see is that THE, where there is no contract, there is no consultancy project or anything like that, the rank actually fell for the same set of clients, where QS showed that they've improved dramatically by 191 ranks. And when this researcher went further down into what essentially caused this whole thing, they realized the faculty-student ratio score of the clients versus non-clients has changed dramatically. Right? The same 9 clients, the faculty-student ratio, the score was 70 in 2016, which improved to 85 in 2021. Whereas for the non-clients, it's 76.87 earlier and 76.67 after 5 years. So there is not much change at all for non-clients, whereas for clients, it changed by about 14.31 points, which improved the rank by about 191 points. And by the way, if you look at the MHES faculty-student ratio of the government of Russia, there also it showed a fall. But very, very surprisingly, in the case of QS, it showed a growth for those universities which were clients of QS. The faculty-student ratio of even THE has shown a fall. The MHES, the government of Russia data has shown a fall. But surprisingly, the QS has shown a growth, because of which the ranks of QS client universities have also grown dramatically by about 191 ranks. And this number very, very clearly states that there is something that has gone wrong for if you're a client of QS versus a client when you're not a client of QS. Inside Higher Ed, one of the very, very good publications which is actually working on this transparency and reporting on higher education across the globe, actually published this entire article. This is actually, and it says, the analysis is limited to 28 universities that participate in the main QS World University Rankings. In total, 22 of these 28 universities, which is 78%, spent 2.8 million on QS-related services over the last 8 years, the report says. And it goes on to say that the results show that universities with frequent QS-related contracts experience much greater upward mobility in both overall rankings and in faculty-student ratio scores over 5 years in the QS World Rankings. It doesn't mean that the Times Higher Education or ARW or any other ranking cannot be, or US News of the World rankings cannot be influenced. In fact, the article further says that asked if other rankings have equal problems, which is the THE or the ARW, US News of the World, or even for that matter, even Careers 360, which also does rankings. This article goes on to say, Times Higher Education and US News take advertising from the universities they rank and hold events for universities. But the business model of QS is likely to be more vulnerable to conflict of interest because the revenues are more heavily derived from universities. They don't get money from the students. Unlike QS, Times Higher Education, US News are also offer substantial subscription-based content for the public, so their revenues are expected to be less dependent on universities alone. So what you get here is simple, that QS's revenue model is susceptible or more vulnerable because all the revenue is coming from the universities, whereas the Times Higher Education, US News of the World, of course, they're not talking of Careers 360, but let me talk about Careers 360 also. That, our revenues also come from the student side of it. We're also entwined in terms of our conversations with the student. So there is a strategic interest in ensuring that the data is correct, the ranking is correct, because student is also paying us, and that makes it less vulnerable for these kind of influences. When we looked at this whole number, their survey participants at times can be influenced because you actually put in your own people to be the survey participants. This, when you actually have a perception study and you have your own people responding to the survey, what happens? Or some institutions even fill the survey by their own, by their known people, because they push this mail, they push these people to be the surveyors. They push their own people in the QS database so they can be surveyed. I'll tell you exactly how this happens. Now, this is a mail that we got from one of the insiders of the whole thing works. And look at this very, very carefully. It goes on to say, "Dear Professor," and we obviously remove the name so that it doesn't come. "I'm personally writing to you," and this is, by the way, someone who is very higher up in a university who's paid QS to be a consulting for the consulting contract. And what this person writes, he writes to his own faculty, who's a professor, and he says, "Dear Professor, I'm personally writing to you with an urgent request, seeking your help and assistance in a very important matter. We need your help in compiling a list of international academic contacts that we have to share with QS for the purpose of the next round of World University Rankings." So what we're getting at is fixing people who are going to be surveyed by QS. "I request you to kindly share with me and at least 5 academicians from outside India who you're personally connected to. This means that you should be able to call them as soon as you receive this email and ascertain their willingness to participate in the survey when they receive it. Once we receive these details from you, we will place them in the QS ranking database. Sometime between January and February 2022, QS will send them an email with a short survey questionnaire to all these people. Most important, it does not matter which university they are working in their seniority. Any faculty member, any academic staff, any doctoral scholar at any grade in any university outside India will be suitable for this purpose." And the mail goes on to say, there are 5 requirements that are requirements for selecting the appropriate individual. The person should be somebody who checks his or her email regularly and will take an effort to identify the survey email from the QS. The person should be in a position to fill a short questionnaire online sometime in Jan-Feb 2022. You should be in a position to call this person in the next 2 days to confirm his or her participation in the survey, and later again call her in Jan-Feb 2022 to check whether that person has actually completed the survey. That person should be reasonably familiar with you, your work, and our institutional activities. If you suggested a few referees of the QS reputation survey in past years, the persons you refer this year should be new and not persons referred to in the earlier years. It is not just that the surveys that are participating in the QS ranking are known to the universities that are adding those names into the list of in the QS database, but there have also been reports of how some of these surveys are being offered money to fill in the survey. So when you actually have your own people filling in the survey, when they're being offered money to fill in the survey, and at times you don't even know what is being offered because some have come out which are very, very serious in nature, then you actually can see a very, very clear bias that might be creeping into the survey itself. QS itself says that they don't allow for canvassing by the universities. But when you actually put in your own people in the survey, and then the letter very clearly states that you can actually you should be in a position to call up the surveyor, you should be in a position to request him to open the mail, and so on and so forth. You obviously would be very, very clearly leaning or biased towards the institution that is paying you, calling you, and also adding you as a surveyor in the QS database. And this creates its own perception bias, and this perception bias, the weightage is 50%. Now, when we looked at this entire episode or how credible the international rankings are, we obviously had to rely on a lot of information that came to us through anonymous emails and through calls and through some of these universities talking to us and talking of how consulting projects are being offered. And the consulting project, by the way, range from 50 lakh rupees to about 2.5 crore rupees. That's the kind of money that exchanges hands when you actually take consulting from an international ranking agency to explain how you can excel in their own ranking system. That is the kind of consulting that we're dealing with. Just imagine a situation where you actually are contesting an election, and the bunch of people who are there, you actually inject up a lot of people who are your own, who know you and who would vote for you, and they might belong to anything, but they would be voting for you, which essentially is what is happening in the perception surveys of this thing. Now, why are we even looking at all these things? Now, QS is a profit-making entity. It's a private profit-making entity based out of UK. The government of India is pushing our Indian institutions to participate in QS survey, which is good because India wants to obviously keep ranking up the global order, and QS and THE and ARW, all three seem to be the right currencies to be up there. But when we actually start giving certain benefits to Indian institutions based on a QS ranking, then that becomes a question mark, because what you can not do from India through NIRF or NAC or anything can be coming back through the QS or THE or ARW ranking, which is what our worry is, essentially that. And two, the students are taking a decision based on these rankings, and these rankings might be, again I'm saying this, susceptible or vulnerable to a bias that is there. We looked at the data of QS in terms of its revenues and all. We could not get the QS UK data here, but we do. QS does have a subsidiary in India which does a lot of work for QS UK. The revenue of this QS India, the subsidiary of QS UK, was about 8.53 crores in 2018. 8.53 crores and a profit of about 93 lakh rupees. But within 5 years, when you look at this in 2023, this revenue has moved up to about 42.78 crores or 43 crores. So what was 8.5 has become 42.5, 43 crores. And the profit, which was about 93 lakhs, has jumped to 5.23 crores, which is 5x, 5.5x jump. How dependable are these rankings? Can the students depend on these rankings to make their own decisions? How important is it for the government of India to rely on these rankings to give autonomy, to give greater autonomy, to give greater freedom for the universities, or even to give an institution of eminence kind of a status, right? Which makes them completely autonomous, in fact, free from all regulations and all regulators. That is a question that I want to keep asking, because NIRF, remember, is based on authentic data. It's based on accurate data. It's based on data that they're submitting to the government of India. And the government of India has the powers to ensure that the data is correct. Because if it's wrong, it's because it's filed in an affidavit by the universities and the vice chancellors. It creates a problem for them, so they're more careful about those kind of things. But when you come to QS, it's largely not based on, a lot of it is not based on data. 50% of it is based on perception. 20% of it is based on how commercially good you are, that you can actually get international faculty and you can get international students in, you can get many of the international stuff that is coming back into the country, and that requires a lot of money. So you have 50% based on perception, 20% based on your financial muscle, and 30% based on actual data set. Whereas when you deal with NIRF, it's dealing with actual data. So the question that we are only asking at this point in time is, do you think the government of India should be relying so much? Do you think the students should be relying so much on international rankings which are vulnerable to a bias? And the report by the University of Berkeley, Center for Higher Education very, very clearly demonstrates that it is biased to those people who are likely to spend consulting contracts with QS. When we started working on this story, we also sent a mail to QS with some kind of questions and wanted a response, because we wanted to ensure that the QS side of the story also goes along with this video. We sent this mail on the 25th of November, followed up with another reminder on 13th of December, and another reminder on the 17th of December. As we are going to press, QS sent as a response, and we thought it is important for us to incorporate the response, and you can actually scroll through the thing to understand what the response is. The same as a link is also given in the article that's about to be published on careers360.com, so that you actually have both sides of the story. It is for you to decide what is right, what is wrong. But I'll just read out for you the crux of what QS says as a response to some of the questions that we sent them. It says, all institutions participating in the rankings are allowed to submit 400 academic and 400 employer contacts. However, institutions are strictly prohibited from canvassing for nominations. To further minimize bias, surveys are sent directly from QS to these contacts, ensuring respondents complete the survey independently. To safeguard the process further, QS employs a stringent validation system that actively monitors, reviews, and detects anomalous responses and patterns. Any irregularities identified are excluded from the results. This is QS's response. It is for you to judge. We put forward everything that we have in front of you. QS response also is there. It is for you to judge. And the question still remains, how credible are the international rankings that we are favoring? Thank you so much. Namaskar.